The Economic Reform Roundtable is coming to an end. So what's happened and what can we expect to take place from here?
This is all about 3 days to inform the next 3 budgets and beyond.
Raise whatever you like. We'll have that debate, not just in the room, but importantly out there as
And
well.
have realistic expectations about the next few days, but I'm optimistic as well.
Well, in the days and weeks leading up to the roundtable, the Prime Minister and Treasurer were at pains to temper our expectations, reminding us that this was a meeting in the Cabinet room and not of the Cabinet. And as this week wore on, the reason for that expectation management exercise became clear. It was a far more muted and timid affair than you may have expected after months of submissions calling for changes to negative gearing and other kinds of taxes, as well as other huge ideas. Every now and then a talking head would pop up, discuss what they'd said at the round table, and then go back in.
Change takes time. The best kind of change is the change that we embark on together, and that's what's driving us.
We did hear at one point the Treasurer and Opposition Treasury spokesman, Ted O'Brien, got into a Barney over spending, but aside from that, there were no other key defining moments in this week. That said, there were still discussions of the nature you'd expect. Talks about AI and how that's going to factor in when it comes to future workplaces and how we could improve productivity through this technology, as well as other things like road user charges, the need for environmental reform, changes to the construction code, a whole raft of issues discussed with a lot of talk about how much consensus may be reached.
There was a very heartening discussion about AI, and not because everybody came to a perfect agreement on every element of AI regulation, but because we got a bit closer.
And there is consensus on some things, like scrapping the 200 or so nuisance tariffs that we've still got on some imports, or speeding up approval times, increasing housing and skills, making sure that the way we use AI both benefits productivity but doesn't totally destroy different jobs. The question from here becomes how the government implements any of this consensus into future reform. What we're expecting to hear from them is that there were areas of consensus that they'll now do extra work on. The road user charge sticks out, as does AI, with the government developing a strategy as we speak. But a lot of the work on what these actual policies will look like is going to be in the months ahead as the government works towards its budget and eventually the next election.
This is an ambitious group. This is an ambitious government. And we have an ambitious agenda before us.
So apart from some low-hanging fruit and some robust discussions that was really positive and constructive, there wasn't a whole lot to come out of this week immediately. By comparison, Mark Butler's National Press Club address on Wednesday was the complete opposite.
Prior to 2024, the NDIS lacked basic prevention controls for fraud and non-compliance. I think Australians are rightly appalled by the drumbeat of stories about shonks and fraudsters who are ripping off taxpayers and, more importantly, people with a disability. And I, for one, share their disgust.
While much of the gallery and our readers and viewers were really honing in on the Economic Reform Roundtable and what was going to come out of this particular moment, out of nowhere, Mark Butler announced massive changes to how the disability scheme was going to work.
Today, I want to focus on 2 ongoing substantial challenges. First, returning the scheme to its original purpose, its North Star if you like, the provision of support to people with significant and permanent disability. And secondly, ensuring that the scheme does become sustainable from a budget perspective.
Despite confirming as recently as May that there would be no eligibility changes to the NDIS, the Minister on Wednesday confirmed that indeed there would be, that by mid-2027, access to the scheme for children with mild autism would be tightened. This would take place after a new $2 billion scheme known as Thriving Kids was introduced by mid-next year. Mark Butler also said that his government was on track to meet their 8% annual growth target by mid-next year, but that beyond that, they wanted to cut growth to the scheme even further. The Minister put a number on this, between 4 and 6%. This is going to mean billions of dollars in savings at a time when huge economic reforms and the discussion of how to rein in government spending is really prominent. It was fascinating to see this really milestone change take place to the NDIS, something we've been looking at and reporting on for years, alongside the Economic Reform Roundtable up here in Parliament. National Press Club and Mark Butler's address was where the tangible, substantive change happened, while we're still yet to see how much of an impact these roundtables really will have. The answers to how much changes to the NDIS will save the taxpayer, as well as how much of the discussions over this week will inform the government, will be seen in future budgets.
And I drew great strength and confidence from their contributions not because they had some kind of faux camaraderie, but because they take the challenge so seriously. And if there's one way to understand how this Albanese government rolls, from the Prime Minister all the way down, is we genuinely believe in our hearts that the best kind of progress that we make is the progress we make together.